You're listening to a Pop House Network podcast for developers by developers.
Welcome to OffHeap episode 95. Hey, folks. We're back. A nice day of summer. We all have our nice cold brews as we do our cheers, guys. As we do our 85th podcast. And for those who are tuning in, my name is Freddie Guime. I'm one of the co-hosts of the OffHeap podcast. Speaker, Java champion, Seattle Java user group, co-organizer, and just here from Seattle with my usual suspects.
All right. Hey, Bob Holland, software engineer at Datavolo, Apache Software Foundation member, Java champion, and CJUG board chair.
Josh Juno, senior software engineer with Java and Jakarta, and also working on lots of Oracle and databases. Author, speaker, Jakarta AE ambassadors, and Java champion.
I'm Michael Manello, director responsible for the open source Spring team from Broadcom, author, speaker, Java champion, curmudgeon at large.
All right. And before we go in, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Datadog. Today's show is sponsored by Datadog, a monitoring and analytics platform that integrates with over 450 technologies, including AWS services, Docker, and Kubernetes. Datadog's platform brings together metrics, traces, and logs in one place so you can get full visibility into your environment and improve your application performance. With machine learning-based alerts, customizable dashboards, and distributed tracing, Datadog makes it easy to unify disparate data sources so you can troubleshoot faster. Start your free Datadog trial today. Listeners of this podcast will receive a free t-shirt once you install the agent and create one dashboard. Visit javaoffheap.com/Datadog to get started. That URL is javaoffheap.com/Datadog to get started. We'd like to thank them for keeping our mics on and our beers flowing. So give them a try. Thank you, Datadog, for sponsoring.
And a quick day.
All right, guys. So what you guys been up to? I was asking this earlier, but I'm going to ask again. How's the non-consultant life going on, Bob?
Oh, it's going good. No, I'm enjoying the new job, enjoying being on a team again. I'm having fun building AI stuff at Datavolo.
Everybody's AI everything, isn't it?
AI, all the things.
Yes, sir.
Oh my gosh. No. It's funny because like a little side note, I was like, I'm starting to dive deep now on the AI, and it's kind of funny, pulling the curtain, and suddenly you see what the wizard is doing. And then you kind of put it back again a little. It's like, oh my gosh, this is really what it is doing. But you know what? It works, and it can actually solve certain problems. So yeah, we'll take it. But actually, I was thinking about that, Bob. We own ourselves a Pop House episode on all things AI.
We do.
Oh, yeah.
No, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the space, especially the Java space specifically. Model training and inference with Onyx. You're seeing more support for the JVM to be able to do these things, library based, even in the code itself with vector APIs. So, it's an exciting time to be a Java developer working in AI.
Yeah, Spring AI, one of my favorites.
Sure.
Throwing Michael a bone. No, but actually, it's actually very good. So I am very happy to use it. But yeah. So all right, let's get into it. While we were away, apparently Java 22 has been released. So
yeah, a lot of interesting things in there. So I mean, the folks that I know I've been working with. So we've got a couple of big things and a lot of little things. So I mean, little things like the string templates and the API, or string templates coming in, that's a lot of fun for folks that have had to inline JSON and large text strings, being able to do that with some of the new stuff that you've got in Java 22. But some stuff that's we talked about a little bit on prior episodes, but now it's here. Statements before super Like
Oh,
that's
God.
an interview question. Like
God, yes. It's like, I remember the Java, like taking the Java certification, like back when you had to explain Java 1.2 as Java 2 back then. And it was that was the thing. So like us crusty old guys are like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
What's
No.
this all about?
yeah.
No, that it could be my favorite feature of 22. Like the amount of times that I have to kind of like do this kind of like acrobatics because I cannot do those like 3 statements, right? Have to create like factory constructors and all these things, and now I can just do it on the thing. Oh gosh, it's probably one of my favorite features of it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I mean the other things that I've been kind of keeping my eye on with the kind of work I've been doing, like in AI, there's a lot of work native and in Python that Java is kind of, I think, trying to catch up with a little bit. So like in this release, you're seeing enhancements to FFI, which I think is important to binding to native code in Java. And then the other piece is advancements. We're on the seventh incubator of the vector API. And I mean, vectors for AI models is a big deal. So
It's the thing, right?
the more the closer you can get that. I mean, like I am waiting to find that Java library that I can do NumPy stuff with. There's so much stuff that you can do in Python with vectors. In Java, it's like,
No.
okay, yeah, this is going to be painful.
So with these things being the 7th incubator and whatnot, of course, we've got Java 23 around the corner. Actually, there's already betas out there. I mean, you can go out and download and start to use. But we're looking at what is it going to be? Java 26 is the next
25 is
long term.
25.
25.
Okay, so we still got a few cycles on there.
Yeah,
Right.
that's not too far away, actually.
Well, yeah, and considering that 21 is the previous LTS, so it's like, yeah, it's that cadence where
It's every 2 years, so every 4 releases. So Java 25. And I would expect, like Vector is a good example of one that I would expect, like they're targeting to land there. I know.
Oh yeah.
I know. Historically, the Java platform team has said, a Java release is a Java release is a Java release, and there's also we don't differentiate between LTS and that. Let's not kid ourselves. They finally, they may not be publicly saying it, but they've come to their senses and like they understand the impact of like if you do a release in between them, like it doesn't really land. So I think that's probably one of the reasons Vector's all the way into the 7th incubator is the fact that they're like they can because they fully expect like nobody's going to pick this thing up until 25.
Yeah.
And I
It wasn't ready for 21. Nobody's gonna pick it up till 25. So.
Right.
and I was thinking about that, like Project Valhalla, right? Like once you start getting like value objects and all these kind of things that are gonna be very memory friendly, like you expect, and because of like the importance of vectors for LLM, like it makes sense to have Valhalla in there and vector APIs kind of like working with it, right? So it's gonna be exciting. Like that's the end. Like I understand that, and they're probably gonna have it in an incubator for a while, but it's because it's baking very good. Like sometimes when you're roasting meats on the barbecue, you need to wait until it's ready.
I mean, like
Low and slow, baby. Low and slow.
low and slow. I mean, one of the most popular Python vector libraries, NumPy.
Yeah.
I think it's NumPy, by the way. We're gonna get
1X release from 2006 until this weekend when they finally released 2.0. So I mean,
yeah.
Hey,
you
Java.
want to get vectors right.
Hey, Java took a long time to go advance theirs.
It's different.
No, virtual threads. No, it takes time. It takes time. That's fine.
How do you get
Cool.
We're not going anywhere.
Related to the platform space, Jakarta EE.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who's that one?
Tipping my hat to Josh.
I'm assuming it wasn't
How
me.
are you Jakarta EE?
Jakarta EE. It's coming. Jakarta EE 11. It's definitely out there. We got milestone 3 available to test now. Support for Java records. JDK runtime aware of support for virtual threads if you're using JDK 21. And then Jakarta Data 1.0, which is going to be pretty big. So I haven't really started to do too much work with 11 yet, but it really does look like it's going to be a good update here. Bring us a lot of good new features, especially if you're on 21.
I am curious. Full disclosure, obviously, I don't spend a ton of time looking at the specs these days. Removal of all optional specs. Any specifics there, or like?
Oh, what are optionals?
Honestly, I'm not quite sure what those are referring to, but
Okay,
How's it right?
because it sounds like now
Oh, yeah.
but that one line makes me think like now you have to get the kitchen sink or nothing. Like there's nothing in between. Which I thought the profiles thing enabled you to be able to do partial pieces. Like, how does this work?
Yeah.
I could be way off, but I'm just.
Yeah, no,
I wish I had a good answer for you here, but I'm not sure what the optional specs actually are.
Okay.
What they're referring to. So,
all right. Yeah. Why don't we mark that as a follow up? That it would be interesting to know what is optional, because I know Jakarta EE and Java EE has gone through various things about different profiles, and some things are optional in different profiles, but what is optional to Jakarta EE in general would be an interesting thing to know.
Also, just again, just me being nosy and curious, the ballots to do the next release on the link that we have that we'll put in the show notes. I know, Josh, you're a big Pariah guy. They were a -1. Do you have any insights into?
I'm not sure why they would have done that. No, I didn't really notice that they were -1 on that, but I guess seeing that they are, I'm going to guess. My only speculation is that there's something they've not got implemented that they don't agree with the implementation of.
Okay.
So that could be what it is, but I don't know exactly the specifics on that. It's
Yeah,
like, they're not the only negative.
And full disclosure, like I don't follow these votes very closely normally, so I don't know if if a non-unanimous vote is a normal thing or not. I always kind of assumed it was, but
Yeah, I mean, in an Apache project, a -1 would prevent a release. So I mean, it's
a lot
a
of
big deal
cases.
there, so
A lot of cases that seems to be the case, right? So the -1s do stick out to me, if nothing else.
Oh, look, like I see, like I was on the mailing list, like Red Hat voted -1 because they don't support Jakarta Data on the platform. So it seems to be related to, like do they have the stuff implemented for it to
we're
be
the only -1 on
No.
that. Either. This actually looks like it's got what, 3?
Yeah, there's 3 in the progress ballots, and in the plan review, Tommy Tribe was a -1 as well.
Well,
So
if we step back 1 second to the optional specifications, I'm not sure if they're talking about MVC because they took that out. That's not going to be part of it. And the same goes
that just
for
was completely removed. It wasn't
optional.
exactly
I don't
right.
believe.
Yeah.
But also, the no
Would you-
specification.
Are we looking at the same? Because I see Tommy Tribe as a plus. Oh, I see.
Down
So the
below.
plan review. Yeah.
Yeah, down below.
Okay. Yep. No, I'm with you.
So
Yeah. So
Yep.
Fujitsu voted -1 because they don't think that Jakarta should support JDK 17 and it still should just go to 21.
Oh, so it's a protest vote against the last minute change. Got it. So for those of you who may not be following along, the original plans for Jakarta 11, they publicly said that they were going to require the baseline to be Java 21. At the 11th hour, they decided to, Red Hat basically said that they needed it to support Java 17 as well. So that pivoted.
Yeah. And Payara did the same complaint from Payara.
Okay. All right. Full disclosure, I was the person that asked on the Jakarta EE call about the baseline, and I was stunned that they actually originally said they were going to require 21. So it wasn't a surprise when they backed down, but or backed off, I should say. But
That seems like a little bit more drama than you would expect.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm going through the list, and I think that's most that's really what it was. What it was. It's is the 17, at least for most of the ones that I looked at.
I mean, I'm sure it's not a trivial amount of work to back out either.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure it's not.
like
oh,
because gone down the virtual threads route and all that, and throw all that in, and now like you got to rip it all out because you can't.
no 17.
One thing if they start on 17 and then later said, yeah, you can do 21,
Yeah. No, 17 doesn't have virtual threads. It's preview still.
right?
It's going to be.
If at all, actually.
Yeah. I wonder if it has something to do with the fact that these application container organizations are going to have to support two different versions of container now, because I know with Pyara, they have a 21 container and then they've got a 17 container. And so I wonder if the -1 vote is going towards that because they don't want to have to, produce that extra level of support on those.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of extra work to carry those two both along.
I mean, it's a non-trivial piece of the framework. It's not like it's validation or something that's like how threads are managed on the container is kind of a big deal.
Completely changes. Yeah.
A big deal.
I mean, the irritating thing, I guess, for me is like, this is a feature toggleable thing. Not everybody needs to 100% virtual threads. So as long as you're able to have some implementation, it may not be the recommended implementation, but
Yeah.
No, and there's language changes between 17 and 21. I think we've like switched state.
There are, but nothing that would rock the world
outside
of
of
container.
virtual threads for a application container based on HTTP mostly, what's the big holdout other than threads?
Yeah.
Which we agree on.
I guess it just worked.
Yeah.
You still have to rewrite some of the stuff to support 17.
Okay, but like what?
Like
What
how
do you think would be
like-
different?
like things like switch statements. Like what is like that's a big one that comes into my mind because that's
Statements in an application container? There might be a few.
Even if there are, you're talking about stuff that literally you could that's a right click and refactor on in your ID level rethinking. The thread model within the container is a very different. Freddie, of all people on this call, I would expect you to be the one that nails on the threading aspect of this is a bigger deal than anybody.
No, I'm hurting. Like I thought this is like a compendium of components, and you have to tell like 35 different projects you need to make this change. And as far as I know, getting 35 people to do something seems to be very hard.
It is.
I do not disagree with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And it's not
So that's
35 people, it's
part of-
35 projects. So multiply
Yeah.
that by X.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's not a technical challenge. Is that you have to tell these people that they have to go back to something they thought it was done, right?
Yeah.
So that's it. Like
I mean, if you've got a lean team and you're trying to move forward and you've got a whole server that is dedicated to virtual threads and you want to move forward with that support, but you still have to have people that know the old stuff. I mean, I guess that can be a little bit frustrating, right? Of course, if you have support plans anyway, you're going to be supporting older versions anyway. So you've still got those people that know that are the experts in the.
I think that'd be funny.
Anyway.
well, it's coming. I mean, the vote pass is going to be released. So hell of high water. Here we go.
Go and get your Power 7 and Glassfish 8 and start playing around now because it's coming.
All right. The next one, I guess while we're not looking, Kotlin 2.0 was released.
Oh, so this one was released a while ago, back in May, but it's got some nice new features. And of course, the 2.0, we have to mention it, right? The big thing here is the new K2 compilers. I'm not too familiar with this stuff, so maybe Freddie or somebody else in the compiler area can talk more to this, but it seems like a pretty big change to the way it's done.
So I've been starting to use Kotlin more and more, and I'm starting to appreciate it. It's nice.
Rod tried it out.
Was that?
Rod Johnson did a Twitter thread on it. You tried
Yeah?
it out.
Okay, so what is the TLD? What is the OpenAI summary of it? He liked it.
He thought it was interesting. He understands why he thought it was. He thought it was the differences were useful. I'll say, it wasn't like a completely. I need to relearn how to do things on the JVM. But he didn't think it was enough to supplant Java as the default language on the JVM.
It's interesting, and we can have a whole discussion on that because like where I'm standing from, I see that it's coming. Like there's a lot of support for it in ways where it's becoming like a first class citizen where I work versus Java.
Yeah.
I mean, we're trying on the Spring World. We're actively trying to get a better view into the market share of Kotlin. It is a really confusing thing for us to be transparent. We've seen surveys of market share anywhere from 3% to almost 30%. That's the Grand Canyon in between there when you talk about market share of a language, right? So it's something we're actively trying to like wrap our heads around better, just with regards to what is it, and when we talk about my project's using Kotlin. Is that just your Gradle file is a Kotlin file, or are you actually developing applications written in Kotlin?
I'd be interesting in segmenting that by whether you're a mobile developer or not, because mobile, I feel like there is a very strong engine on Kotlin
100%.
versus server side, like somebody creating an API or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we know people like so Todd Ginsburg from the CJUG is certainly a proponent of server side Kotlin for APIs and all sorts of other things, but is he the majority? I don't know about that.
I'll tell you, we use it server side. So like we're almost all in on it. So, and the interesting part is the switch between going from a Java to Kotlin. For the most part, it's okay, except when you're bringing like reactive to structured concurrency, and suddenly you see like this Kotlin construct with some Java construct for managing like threading and then everything blows up like that.
Yeah, I mean some of the cross language pieces. So I mean, like, my current employer uses a lot of OK HTTP.
Yep.
Which is a Kotlin HTTP client, and when you're trying to write unit tests and mock a Kotlin class, like you run into all the weird things. It's like,
oh, interesting.
Okay, what am I mocking here?
Yeah.
Was trying to read the code and it was getting shown compiled Kotlin into Java, and it's like, what is this?
It's kind of funny because it's usually the other way around, right? Like it's usually
the other way around. But you are starting to see that because of the popularity of the language. There are certain things people like to do in Kotlin, and you'll see interop where a Java library is calling a Kotlin library.
Yeah.
So OK HTTP is one example of that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, a couple of the other things in the 2.0 release real quick, the new Compose compiler Gradle plugin, talking about the Gradle, and then generation of Lambda functions using invoke dynamic. That can be a big one. Kotlin X metadata JVM library is now stable. Monitoring GC performance with Kotlin native with signpost on Apple platforms. And there's a whole list of other things. So 2.0 definitely seems like a big release. If you're in the Kotlin ecosphere and you're using this or you're interested in using it, I think it's certainly worth taking a look at.
Oh, this is interesting, and it's kind of it's not hidden, but it's like the K2 compiler can target JVM, native, WASM, and JavaScript. So that's
Yeah.
Like you can just write Kotlin and suddenly you run it on native without having to do things like raw VM and stuff.
That's interesting.
Support for unsigned primitive types and functions with JS import in Kotlin WASM.
The WASM angle for Kotlin is interesting.
Yeah.
Waiting to see where that leads.
Yeah. No, that's it's those JetBrain guys. with their fanciful IDE and their cool language. So go try it out. All right. Next one is Quarkus is going to a foundation.
This one was mine. Red Hat made an interesting blog post. It announced, so that the title is moving Quarkus to a foundation, and the TLDR is we intend to move Quarkus to a foundation to accelerate the adoption rate, enhance transparency, foster collaboration, and encourage multi-vendor participation and execution. They announced that they're going to that. Then it gives them kind of a history of Quarkus. They call out that they've got over 900 contributors. They've got 111 non Red Hat contributors, which that means they got 789 people at Red Hat working on Quarkus. Holy crap! They talk about the downloads that they've the core components are over 1 million downloads a month. That's cute. Spring grows more than that a month. But the weird thing I felt was they don't announce where they're going. It just says they're going to a foundation, not which one. Why make the announcement now? Why make this announcement if you haven't figured out where you're going to stick it?
It does say that they're aiming to establish Quarkus as the de facto standard for new Java-based applications.
Yeah,
That would mean that they've got a pretty big vision.
What is the opinion from the Spring guy?
I've had this conversation with other people who wanted to become the de facto application standard. Like I literally
Brains.
pardon. I mean, go look at my resume, and there I was president of a foundation that key leaders wanted that to happen for that space. It's just not going to happen. Like it's not.
I mean, Quarkus is interesting. Like, as you said, it is a Red Hat dominated project that does have some cross organizational support.
Yeah.
It's an interesting framework, which again is, to be frank, very similar to Spring, trying to use a lot of functions that Spring uses. But
under the hood is very different.
under the hood, I agree with that.
Yeah, it's a reactive based framework.
But trying to target a lot of native compilation is where I feel like the Quarkus people are trying to differentiate.
Yeah, that's what that was where they originally started. That was their niche.
Looking at functions, looking at that. So I mean, it's like to me, like you already had you have Erin Shapel, she's Red Hat or is she IBM?
She's Red Hat.
She's Red Hat employee that just started a new foundation. Is that the place that this is?
Oh, so
I feel like you're just like
I just connected the two dots.
two things related to that. First of all, Aaron's foundation already has Hibernate committed to be donated there,
which is fine.
but it's also a Red Hat project that's related to Quarkus.
It is.
So, like that, to your point about being associated,
Synergy.
Full disclosure, I have asked Erin this very question, and she,
Not now.
she does not have a commitment one way or the other. So
Okay.
that's.
So if we go down farther in the post, it does say criteria for choosing the right foundation, and they list several criteria that they're looking for. And then at the very bottom, it does say conclusion and call to action. They're asking for the community to provide feedback for concerns and constructive feedback that's crucial to help them to decide on the best home for Quarkus. So it's definitely a evolving thing. They're looking right now actively, and I think they're looking for some feedback from the community, people who obviously are into Quarkus and using it.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe that's it. I mean, it's going to Common House would be like the obvious thing, but if you really want to empower your community to make the decision, you're going to integrate a lot of different people's opinions and maybe just see where people land. And maybe you end up at the same place, but at least you asked.
Yep.
Right. Maybe that's the play.
Yep.
Trying to be transparent and open about the whole thing.
And I know we have a discussion topic around this, right? Like it's going to be interesting, or at least a little bit connected to this. But like the final question I have for this is this a good thing? And I know good is a very big word. Like for Quarkus,
Good in what way?
that's why
Why
good
would it
like
be bad?
good for the project.
Why would moving to a foundation for a project be necessarily bad?
So the interesting part I think is there is a two sides of always that equation, right? Like if you have control of all the pieces, like for example, Microsoft C# does, you can move very extremely quickly on what you want the project to look like, right? The moment,
Yes.
the moment that you move it to a foundation, then you kind of are then opening it up to you are deliberately going to move slower because now you want to.
Depending on how the foundation is structured, right? So within the ASF, I will say that there are certain things that they look for with projects that they bring in through incubation. Cross vendor, they want to see, individuals empowered, not the companies behind them making the decisions. So yes, I was asking it to be a little bit, tongue in cheek. There is absolutely reasons why you may not want to do that, but okay. So governance may change.
I think in both cases, whether it's good or bad, is it's in the eye of the beholder. So like it can be good for some people and bad for others. It can be bad if you want single vendor control. It can be bad if you like that control aspect. You do typically, I will say typically, Aaron's Foundation is actually an interesting case where in theory you don't need to currently. But the governance model does impart additional things on top of the way you run your project, typically in a foundation.
Yes.
So that can be viewed as bad. But on the other hand, with those extra things, you expect things back. You expect that if company A walks away from a project, it still will continue on. Like that's one of the key things that from an Apache foundation, like if I'm looking at an Apache project, it's one of the reasons I'm going to consider them is because in theory, the governance model should require that there's like, if somebody walks away from something, there's somebody else in the wings. Now we can debate
sometimes that doesn't play out.
Exactly.
I don't disagree, but that is ideally
that's the idea behind it, right? That's the spirit of the law. And so like I think there's both sides to that coin, and like anybody making that choice needs to weigh both sides of that. That's honestly one of the things that makes it so interesting to me that they announced this now is because of those trade-offs depending on where it lands. There are things that impact, is there longevity that is safe by the foundation? Are there additional processes that will slow it down by the foundation? Like these things matter to the health and future sustainability of a project. And they're different from foundation to foundation to foundation. And so by saying, hey, we're going to go to a foundation without where feels like there's a big gap in this decision process to me. Like it kind of punted that it almost says, we don't want this anymore. Yeah, right. Tell us where to put it. That's almost what it feels like because they can't sell the benefits of it because the benefits are fundamentally tied to where it lands. From my perspective.
I mean, to that point, I mean, is this similar to like the Play framework and Scala, where they sort of divested from that a little bit?
Or JavaFX, right? JavaFX was another one that happened.
Yeah, I think there's multiple examples of this. So, but yeah, Michael's reading this, I think, differently than the rest of us, and he may be right. It's potentially a divestment thing. Is like
we don't want to work on it anymore.
RedHat was really dominating this conversation. We want to make it open sourcey and move it to a foundation because
we might have resources.
I mean, that's reading into it a lot,
but it does lead into the next topic.
Yeah, it does.
Certainly.
And I just wanted to mention the one thing that comes to mind when you say something like that is Jakarta EE, right? Because Oracle had Java EE. They moved that to a foundation.
Multiple examples.
And ultimately, I think the main goal was to unload it, open it to the community to move forward and evolve. They didn't want to be using all of their money and resources to move it along.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, there's good examples and bad examples of this that we could, spend all night,
Yeah.
going through. And even if it starts off well, like well-intentioned, like Oracle found a good home. Essentially, that's what they did. They found a good home for technology that they didn't want to solely support anymore. Like a topic, a couple down the list is another one that we found a good home for technology, but years later that good home has decided to divest. So that's still
Yeah.
So for me, the weird thing about this is the fact that I think all of the benefits are tied to the landing place and the arrangement there, and that is the one piece that they have not said they have. So, what do they get out of that announcement?
Yeah.
Hopefully they get community support. 'cause I
That
think that's what they're
sounds like the play. I mean,
Yes.
the motivation behind it, I agree, could be a lot of different things, but the hope is if you are deferring on the decision, but saying we need to make a decision, somebody knows something, and because that person knows that they may not be the right person to make the decision, they're going to open source the decision.
That's fair. It's just
I'm reading into the tin hat model that you just presented.
yep. No, I get it.
That way, because I think to Josh's point, that the naive way of looking at it is we don't want to force the community a way that they may not want to go by being respectful of other people's opinions.
Yeah.
But we know that this needs a foundation.
This needs a new home.
It doesn't have a home right now, right?
Sure it does. It's ready.
It's corporate sponsored.
It does have a home.
It's a corporate sponsored
Yes.
You're correct.
It
But
needs a new home. We are kicking it out. That is the only message they've said so far.
Yeah.
That's what.
I didn't read it that way. I am considering that right now. Because the one thing I will say, in a time when regulations and things are increasing and the expectations of an open source, especially a popular enterprise used open source with all the security regulations coming, it is going to be very hard to exist outside a foundation or corporate governance.
Yes. Yeah.
In this world.
Yeah. I completely agree that the truly independent open source projects, I guess, is not a realistic proposal in 2024 and beyond.
No, all the regulations and things are going to make that very hard.
Yeah.
You want to be a part of a collective that can support different aspects of your mission.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't disagree that your point is it's a different read on it though. So yeah, it could be that.
And we'll update as soon as we know where they're going. All right, next one. Red Hat prunes middleware to invest in AI.
So this was an article in the Register, and essentially they list in there a list of projects that Red Hat is going to be divesting from in one way or another. And so they talk about apparently changes are a part of a company's strategic realignment, which is assessing the Hat's products and services to identify those that no longer align with our long-term strategy. And so products in which fewer headers will be working on include, they give you a list of projects. And so Red Hat build of OpenJDK, Red Hat build of Node, Red Hat build of Eclipse Vertex, Apache Camel,
Spring Boot? I didn't know they.
Spring Boot's another one that they call out. That Red Hat Spring Boot is also on the chopping block. That one, my understanding is that Red Hat was just repackaging the open source bits. So Spring has changed its support model.
Sure.
And we are no longer making publicly available the source code once the projects go out of open source support and into commercial support. We're no longer making the source code publicly available to non-paying customers. So other vendors can't repackage those fixes and sell them as
They
they
have to fork them themselves
and do the fix
and do
themselves.
the
Exactly.
fixes.
Yeah. So Red Hat has chosen not to
do that.
Exactly. So, but if you look at these things, Node, OpenJDK, Camel, Boot, it's not a far stretch to lump Quarkus in that list.
It's just not announced.
I mean, well, it's not an integration, technically integration project, but
True.
then again, neither is the JDK.
Neither is JDK, neither is Vertex.
So that it does seem to fit that model.
Yeah.
I mean, the part to me is we go through cycles of this, it seems like all the time, where people's like, okay, the margins aren't in integration.
Yep.
And then we go and chase the next shiny object, which is right now AI, which is a company I'm working with that is AI. So AI is clearly super important, but everybody forgets the integration piece. And then it's like, why does nothing work together anymore? It's like, oh, we need to do integration frameworks again. We're in the downward swing of that cycle.
Yep.
There's all of those frameworks are super mature, very well used frameworks.
Yep.
They will recover again, but yeah, I'm sad for the communities that's impacting. Like I did a ton of work with Camel in the last decade.
Long live Camel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Also getting the SNP are, and this is, I'm reading from the article, also getting a SNP are RedHat AMQ streams based on Apache ActiveMQ, Apache Kafka, and Strimzy. But just from a timing perspective, the RedHat article about middleware taking a trim
And
came out before than the Quarkus article. So
read that how you will. Maybe Michael is right.
Just to clarify, I know that we just mentioned Apache Camel. This is the Red Hat build of Apache Camel, but they're not
Sure. Yeah, but
All of these are Red Hat builds.
Red Hat is a very significant contributor to Camel. There's no doubt in that community. Klaus Ibsen is a Red Hat employee, and he is one of the most epic committers in Apache. Like the guy commits tons of code. So
hopefully
it is significant to make that statement.
Hopefully he will continue to.
Yeah, no, he as far as I know, he's still there. He's still churning away on Camel. So I'm not speaking anything about of him. I'm just mentioning that Red Hat is a big contributor to Camel. So it's significant to hear that they are backing that out a little bit.
All right. To keep moving things forward, we have a new, okay, I don't know who did this one. Aqua IDE for test automation.
This one I thought was just a pretty neat one. We have a new IDE for test automation, and this is from IntelliJ. And there seem to be some pretty cool features involved in this particular IDE. I've not downloaded it and started to use it yet. I did look at it and briefly, looked it over, and it does offer some pretty neat stuff for things like Selenium. It does have
haven't heard that in a long time.
Selenium.
support for like Playwright and things like that. And so this has been out there for a while, but it's a free license. It's generally available now. And so
I think it's, just to be sure, it says free individual non-commercial license, or they have a paid commercial license. So yeah, just make sure that you can use it.
Commercial use, yes. I mean, obviously, if you're doing this for your organization, you'll have to look into probably the paid version.
I gotta love all these new licenses. Making lawyers very happy.
It used to be easy, isn't it?
I don't know. It goes through cycles. It was easy for a while. There was a complete domination of just OCI or open source compliant licenses, and now we're in the wild west again.
Well, I know. I remember, like a lot of the GNU stuff was kind of hard to figure out. Now we kind of know, or mostly know, but yeah, I kind of remember struggling with what does it really mean? But it means what it means. All right. Next one. OCI Stops Funding Grails.
This one was mine. So a little history here. Grails used to be associated with Spring in the Spring framework. They were part of the Spring team. Years ago, this was I forget what year it was, but this was 1993-ish. No, it's way after that. I'm sorry, 2015.
Yeah.
2015. The Spring team decided to divest in Grails. We did the due diligence, found a good home. OCI agreed to take it on. And they've been the stewards of it ever since. And however, they announced in May of this year that they are going to stop funding the Grails work going forward. To my knowledge, all of the original committers, Graham and Jeff Brown and all those guys, are long gone. They went to Mike. Yeah, they actually went to Oracle to work on Micronaut for a while. I don't know. I don't think they're both there now. I think Graham is. I don't know about Jeff. Yeah. So like, OCI has pulled their funding. So this is probably the end of Grails.
So I mean, historically speaking, Grails was kind of Java's response to Ruby on Rails. This is the way
It was the closest thing we had.
the closest thing we had for a while. It was a very productive web framework. We could do a lot of things. People built plugins for it like crazy, but it was almost like one of those things where it grew so fast, trying to keep up with Ruby, and then the support's been falling out for Grails for a while. There has been a lot of modules for Grails that I tried to use maybe 7-8 years ago, where it's like, this is clearly not being upkept.
I mean,
Stuff for like LDAP, like stuff that's you see in every
important,
enterprise where it's important.
I completely agree with you. I remember my limited experience with Grails, which was before I joined the Spring team. I was working on a project, and first of all, just being a Spring guy drove me crazy. Like, I can do this in 5 minutes in Spring, but trying to figure out the Grails native way to do it frustrated me. But also, there were, to your point, it was to use your words, it was the Wild West when it came to plugins. I remember there was a plugin that we used. I want to say it was feature toggles.
Sure.
And there was a bug in it, and I went back and forth with the owner a couple times. He accepted a couple of my stuff, but he didn't. To your point, he didn't want to maintain his plugin. So, like, to actually keep the project running, I believe they were building on my fork when I left the company.
Oh, wow.
It was just the only way to keep it going. So like,
and then just to be like to understand, like, the reason why this is not popular anymore is because we really split up the front end and back end. Like, there's like, essentially my front ends will be React.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. I honestly don't know. Like, those models have evolved so much. Like, you've seen it go from APIs with just JavaScript front ends to the fully baked web platform like a Rails. Like Rails was, where it's like you have templating system for the front end, you have a back end that feeds into that. Back all the way to now where it's like React, where it's like, hey, just build your whole application in the front end and just get your data from the services. Like, that space has evolved considerably. So
I would also argue that the Grails Groovy, the language has fallen out of favor.
It's fallen a little bit out of favor. Like, it's you look at the build pipelines in Gradle, where that was a big Groovy proponent of the build process. Now that's a lot of that's into Kotlin.
I would say I would argue that Groovy is one of the reasons that, while Gradle was as powerful as it is also held it back because of how difficult it is to use. Like, I know from in my world, the market share of Grails is still a rounding error compared to
it's a very good. It's good for scripting, but again, it doesn't scale up very well. Just like scaling up, in my opinion, JavaScript without TypeScript. Like, again, when you lose the power of the compiler, Groovy doesn't have the strong compiler that Java does, because it lets you do a lot of things without breaking. But it breaks at runtime instead. So Groovy as a language, I don't know. Like, I feel like Groovy has actually done all right at the ASF, but
do you know anybody actually using it outside of their build system? Outside of
outside of Gradle, outside of builds and scripting, but that's the strong point right now. To build large applications, no.
Yeah, so that's
to build large applications, no.
That's my point. Is like
space,
but that's exactly my point. Is like, Groovy as a language to build enterprise platforms or projects has fallen out of favor.
Rails
was built on that
larger application and Groovy.
Exactly. Yeah. So
is potentially part of the reason it maybe didn't do as.
I'm looking at Wikipedia, which is okay. It's Wikipedia, so. But it says JVM languages, high profile JVM languages. Java is number 4 right now. Kotlin number 19. Scala 34. It says Groovy no longer in the top 50.
Okay.
Same with Clojure, no longer in the top 50. So at
I haven't-
one point, these
I haven't
probably
Clojure in a long
bigger.
time.
Clojure.
No,
Was
we're in
that,
the top 50.
that was Uncle Bob, right?
Yeah, that was
Functional programmer, remember?
Yeah.
And then they just had Java do some a little bit of functional programming and killed
Yeah,
every
one
single one of
yeah.
them.
What do I?
Streams.
Lamb
We
chop
don't
up.
need functional
You don't
programming.
really, you never really wanted functional programming.
You just wanted stream.
Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly.
Oh my god! No, I'm doing my Grado now in Kotlin. It's kind of disorienting a little bit, but I do like you can feel the tightness of it. So yeah, it's I once I navigated it, there's no reason for me to go back to like Ruby at all. Like, all right, next one. Woman who codes ends.
Hey, this was mine, but Bob, do you want to take it, or you want me to? Do you want me to intro it and then turn it to
Yeah, why don't
you?
you intro it? I mean,
Okay.
because we've actually, I think, both had a little bit of experience with this organization, right? I mean, so
We have those things.
done partnerships with Women Who Code, right, Freddie? I mean, we had done things at 1871
Yeah.
with Women Who Code. So
And I've been running I was volunteer for running a couple of their courses on like my kids' high school.
Yeah. So Women Who Code, an organization with the mission to enable or enhance or progress the participation of women in our industries fundamentally. So women are, as we all know, severely underrepresented in our industry. Women Who Code, their mission was to help with that issue. And as of they made the announcement. Let me just bring up the blog post again real quick. Is the date actually in here?
it is. Where is the date?
They don't have a date on here. On the blog post, it's
April 18, 2024.
all right. There you go. So as of April 18th, Women Who Code has decided to close their doors. And the reason they cite in their blog post is lack of funding. And so that's really disappointing. I know they've done a ton of good work. They've done things that again, this is a huge problem for our industry. To be completely transparent, I am tired of having to figure out do we have enough women speakers? Do we when I hire, making sure I talk to enough women is all of the checkbox, the kind of things. Like, I just want women to be a part of our industry. Like, I want them to have an equal space, and I want this problem gone. I'm not saying that it is, or I'm not trying to downplay it. It's like, fundamentally, I want this to be a problem fixed. And they were something that I was hoping to really, see make bigger strides than have been. But Bob, you did
the concern I have is just it's around lack of funding.
Mhm.
Is certainly something that has been hitting a lot of not-for-profits.
Yep.
It's a tighter industry and things like that. But the story is not completely out in the public in my eyes yet. So I mean, as somebody that has worked in the not-for-profit space as a volunteer, the first thing you look at when a company's like, oh, we don't have funding or we're running out of money, is their 990, right? So that is a form you file with the U.S. government as your tax return for a not-for-profit. And it states your incomes and your expenses and basically kind of tells the story of where all the money's going. So, their latest one from 2022 is the fiscal year that they have.
Mhm.
It was submitted in September of 2023, shows that they were losing money, right? So they showed income of somewhere in the 3 million range, and they showed expenses somewhere in the 4 million range, and net with all the other things going on, you saw a decrease in the balance of about 100K.
Okay.
But you also had $2 million in the bank. So to me, it's like, all right, well, I don't know what 2023 looked like, if that maybe accelerated, but it's like you're closing down because of lack of funding, but you did have money in the bank to continue this mission. It's like, all right, let's drill down into the 990 some more. So then you start looking at compensation, where the money is going, and you look at the salaries, and there's not a whole lot there that looks exaggerated,
Mhm.
right? They're certainly not making pauper salaries,
Yeah.
but they're making software engineering type salaries
Yeah.
for the jobs that's being done. But you also
Which
see-
for a foundation of that size is not
Foundation is not
unreasonable.
uncommon. It's not uncommon. Like, so for a foundation bringing in $4 million, that is actually more than the Apache Software Foundation brings in a year.
Okay.
Just to set that, so that's
Context.
more than the Python Software Foundation brings in a year. And you look at the salaries, and they're comparable for what these folks are doing. So nothing there, but you also see this like $2 million of other salaries and then no documentation in the 990. So it's like, do you have a lot of people making a little bit of money that you're paying that maybe this model wasn't scalable, or where is that money going? Because the 990 actually doesn't document what that other is. So there's a lot of money that you don't have a paper trail to, which makes me, it leads to more questions. It's like, I want to ask like, okay, well, clearly you're saying that you don't have the funding to support what you're doing, but as a independent observer looking at your financial statements, there's not a lot of clues to say, are there any adjustments
Where
you
would
could have
things
made
went wrong?
to keep this program alive that maybe you didn't make? To me, it's a head scratcher.
Even as an opportunity to learn, opportunity to learn for going forward.
Absolutely.
Like, if you are starting a foundation doing something like, what should I not do kind of thing, like that, as of right now, it's not clear what
There's not enough
where things went
information.
wrong.
Like, so, I mean, the ASF in their history, and if you look at their 990s, there are years we have run a deficit. We have not said, oh, it's time to close the Apache Software Foundation because we're not making money. To me, I think there's a little more explanation that I think people maybe are due, because this is a big gap that you've identified that now suddenly you don't have. I don't think there's any big replacement for this
there
foundation.
isn't. Not that I'm aware.
There's not somebody else doing this that they're competing with. Like, if the ASF, there's actually a dozen other software foundations out there right now.
Right in line
that
way to
could
pick it up.
do, I'm not saying similar things to the ASF, but they're in the space.
Yep.
There's nobody in this space to take over what the mission that they're
Not at the scale of
at this scale.
Yeah.
So for me, this raises a lot of eyebrows. I'd love to know more about what they were seeing versus the blog post, which doesn't really go into the numbers or anything else, just lack of funding.
Yeah.
You guys were bringing in $3 million a year.
Where is it?
That's a lot of money.
All right. And then now to the discussion group before we get run out of the bar. Open source is at a crossroads. So who wants to start with this about like
Well,
this
Mike, you post the article, but I've read this article as well. So
Yeah. So
Either way.
this is an article in the news stack. It's called "Open Source is at the Crossroads," and I'll read the blurb at the top. The cracks are beginning to show in this global ecosystem as many projects lack the basic funding to sustain the software that literally runs the world. It goes through a number of different bullet points, but the general thinking here is that open source runs the world. I don't think anybody, at least on this recording, is going to disagree with that. But it is severely underfunded. It is under-resourced, and it is being squeezed from a commercial aspect everywhere you look. So we see projects like, we just went through a list of projects in the news of ones that are being shuttered for various reasons, or being divested in whatever, from a flat out dollars and cents perspective. We see license changes in the open source. Bob mentioned a little bit ago how, as recently as 5 years ago, if you pulled up an open source project, you could probably have a pretty good guess at what the license was without even looking at it. Nowadays, you not only do you have no idea what it is, you don't know if it's going to stay that way for the next 6 months, depending on what the corporate entity behind it is. We've seen Elastic, Terraform, Redis. Like, there's a whole laundry list of license changes to combat various other commercial pressures. This is, I don't want to say it's a systemic problem in our industry, but it definitely is the foundations of how our industry runs, the foundations of how our world run, in that, open source is what runs the world. those foundations are not as sturdy as we might like to think. And this article gets into, like, what does this mean?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I would say the article, it is a good article about eliciting the problems, but it certainly doesn't try to even dive into whatever the solution may be.
Yes.
And the fact of the matter is a lot of the open source projects and foundations are trying to figure out what the solutions are, because I mean, you mentioned license change. So I mean, that is corporate entities that maybe either have control of projects or significant influence on projects. Let's say the open source model allows people to use the code that we're contributing out to easily. So we're going to change it. So the stuff that we contribute now, you're going to have to pay us to get that. I mean, it's something we've seen in a number of open source projects. The other thing that you didn't touch on, but is absolutely in the forefront, is increased regulation. The CRA from Europe, the US is looking at different
Options,
regulations and laws in order to increase our security posture here in the US with open source projects, because, at the end of the day, like the saying used to be, as many eyes make the problem shallow, right? Or I'm paraphrasing.
Yep.
But the fact is, like, security problems are sometimes a lot deeper. And even with many eyes, there's only a few eyes that are really going to be able to flush those out and correct them in a way that makes sense. So increased security regulation isn't just like, oh, we're going to make the projects more open so more people can find the problem. Yeah. You actually need specialized people to be looking at these things and fixing them. And the governments are asking for more information and reporting on these things, either from the companies that are making money off of them, and potentially even from the people that are writing the code for them that maybe are doing it as a project or a benevolent dictator for life thing. So all of that thing puts strain on that system, which is another thing that they're calling out. Now the response has to be figuring out the right ways to combine, to use the scale of open source to say, look, we're 3 companies using the same project. We all are basing our code of the open source branch. Can all 3 of us share the burden of this cost? Mm-hmm. So we don't do 3 source audits, or we don't do 3 different, bug bounties for the same bug or something like that. How do we set up a system where we can all chip in, we all get the benefit, and the security posture of our projects in the open are increased? And those are, I think, the places that foundations can help with, is just like figuring out how to put together programs where companies can get that maximum benefit. And different foundations have different rules. Like the ASF, we won't pay for development, but there's a lot of things that are not development that relate to security posture, like dependency audits. Being able to create documentation off of those, where it's like, okay, maybe a volunteer contributor is not going to find a lot of interest in going through all the dependencies and seeing where all the vulnerabilities are. But could we pay somebody for that? Where companies could contribute together and then say, all right, let's have somebody do an audit that's paid work, but we publish the results publicly so that everybody that uses that project benefits and can cite that in their reporting back to the government to say, we are in fact following protocol.
But I mean, the article even talks about like resourcing, not just the dollars and cents perspective, but from a people perspective. I mean, if we think about the number of corporations that use open source libraries X, Y, and Z versus how many actually contribute back. I mean, there was just the Microsoft, I don't want to call it a hack. That's the wrong term, but the vulnerability of that small, was it a Linux utility?
Oh, XYZ?
Yes. That's when you talk. I know the one you're talking about.
We did talk about it. I'm XZ.
Yeah, but I mean, basically what happened there is, it was a one guy project that was, the guy was like overburdened and somebody happened to extend a hand. It was just a poisoned hand. Like those kinds of things are just as much a problem in any of these other projects, right? I mean,
they can be. I mean, so it's hard to draw the distinction because there are a lot of projects. I mean, we mentioned a few that some companies are even backing away from that have a very large contributor base, and a lot of that contributor base are paid full time
Yes.
to contribute to open.
Yes. Yes.
So there are projects that are not in that space,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of projects. And I feel the ones that are most vulnerable are the ones that are almost looked at as public utilities. Log4j, for example.
100%.
Nobody wants to pay for it.
Yep.
But it is important to every single application. It is almost like, again,
Ubiquitous.
like to the ASF montage, a public good. People just expect it to be there and it to work and it to not be vulnerable to hacking.
Yep.
Compression libraries
Yep. Which is
are
our own.
similar, where it's just like compression. It's just supposed to work.
Yeah.
Like we shouldn't need to pay people to do
It's
compression. Once you get it right,
it's a math problem we solved years ago.
problem. So, but like those are the ones that I think are the most vulnerable, is where it's not an evolving problem. It's a problem that people think is solved and solved it as a public good. How do you attract interest in keeping those things secure? Because the runtimes that they run on are evolving.
Yep.
And obviously there's people involved in these projects that can evolve the code base in a way that is bad. I don't know that I have a full solution or an answer to that problem. Like the Log4j thing is a tricky thing. Although I will say, when Log4j happened, there was definitely an uptick of funding to the Apache Software Foundation because people knew, oh, we need to fix this.
Yeah,
Somebody fix it.
Yeah,
Here's
yeah.
some money.
Yeah. Here's a check. Make it go away.
So I mean, there is some desire for that, but how do we create that so it's not in retrospect and it's proactive? I think that's the big lesson is how do we identify the utilities and identify the ones that, hey, if this stuff breaks, like it's bad.
And it feels that it's also a who blinks first kind of thing, right? Like you only need to fix it once, and you only need to pay to be fixed once.
Sure.
You get somebody else. IBM maybe is going to go first, so I don't have to go first, right? Yeah, it's hard.
And you're starting to see some of this come from government. So, I mean, some of the examples of this, like, so Log4j, I'll pick on it as an example. The Germany launched the Sovereign Tech Fund, which gave money to Log4j contributors. That money did not come through the ASF. We do not pay for development. But government entities that say, hey, this is
you can petition
a public good and we need this to be secure, we're able to give money to those contributors so that they could keep on the ball. So it maybe doesn't need to go through the foundations, but we need a mechanism for doing that for those utility libraries.
That's just one aspect of this open source being vulnerable, though, right? I mean, security is one piece of it, but licensing is another.
That's the total different copy.
Yeah, the commercialization of open source. Yeah, the need to even open source projects in safe corporate homes. There are pressures that are different than anything that we've seen in the past to commercialize those capabilities. And you're seeing it across the industry. Like we talked about the license changes for, it goes all the way back to Mongo and whatnot.
Mongo.
Elastic, Terraform. But even you're seeing, even the ones that are able to avoid the license changes and are adamant that won't happen. There are other angles being tweaked. So like support models, Spring is an example of that, right? Like historically, we used to make all of our support commits used to be in open source and publicly available. Whether you paid for them or not, you had access to them. Not the best business decision we ever made. I'll be the first to admit that. But we've fixed that in that now after Spring goes out of open source support, you have to pay to get access to the code and the binaries with those fixes. But like those kinds of things are going to continue to evolve, and those pressures are going to continue to only ratchet up.
Yeah, I mean, and this is not a universal thing. This is my opinion.
Just really quick, it's
the license changing, I think, is a blunt force object.
Oh, 100%.
for that.
Yeah,
Like, so
that's the
I
sledgehammer.
struggle with that
That's the
because it's like, okay, you're going to send the lawyers after us because of this, because people are trying to fork the projects. And when people fork the projects,
Oh.
then they start getting accused
Oh,
of, oh, you're copying code
Red-
from
Red-
our repo. that is
Redis happened in
completely
how
open.
long? Redis took
Yeah.
how long to fork?
Not like, yeah, it was days.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, you're setting up these confrontations versus, okay, we're just not going to commit it back to the public, which is a fairly common. It's a more common that Red Hat has adopted this, and Spring Team has adopted this approach, where it's like you got to pay, you get access to that, but we're keeping the license.
We're keeping the license, and we
They're
also
the same.
and also the open source, period is still, at least on the Spring side of things. I still believe it's a very generous support policy.
Sure.
It's still a year of free support. Like,
Right.
I like, how much more do you want to just give you for free?
Yeah, no,
I mean, at the end of the day,
like so, but I struggle with the license changing because I think it's similar to folks that try to litigate themselves out of getting fired from a job. It's like, oh well, I have this in my contract, you can't fire me because I negotiated some terms with the like keep the same terms for everybody. Just control what you actually put out in the open. If somebody actually solves the problem twice just as good as you, great. That's another developer getting paid. And again, personal opinion.
Yeah.
If you're willing to pay two people to fix the same security issue and you got the money to do it, that's fine for our industry. I'm going to litigate against you because you copied something that couldn't be done some other way.
Yeah.
And now you're going to say, oh, you're breaking our copyright because you implemented our interface, which again, the Supreme Court ruled is fine in Google Oracle. Like, we're just making money for lawyers now. Let's at least do this in a way where we make money for the developers.
I mean, while true, there is like some of the examples that we've named off, the reason for the license change has been scale. Mongo's the class example.
They're
Right? Like,
it's because the cloud vendor for creating service at
Exactly.
scale, and they're saying we want everybody except at this scale, you got to pay.
exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing is Mongo, I believe they even tried making a deal with AWS. They couldn't come to an agreement. So Amazon has the ability to be like, hey, you 100 developers over there, go write me a document database. They have the ability to do that, and they did that. And so, like, it just re-implement the Mongo stuff so it works. Like, that's
But it's good for developers. At least you're paying more developers to do work.
it's good for developers, but it's bad for innovation, right? Because the people that actually innovated and created that kind of thing, like, that's a great way to kill it off.
Yeah, because AWS has deeper pockets and more scale.
Whatever I create,
Mongo created their alternative BSL license to try to do with that. But like AWS still has their document database.
oh yeah, they're
not paying Mongo.
Their license change was a reaction,
Was a reaction to it. So I mean that damage was already done.
Yeah.
Mongo is still alive.
Yeah.
Like maybe this is a different conversation if 5 years from now they're out of business.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, now we have evidence, but if Mongo is still in business in 5 years, it's like, okay, did the license change save their business model? Or if they would have adopted, again, model where maybe they were not pushing security fixes and critical things to the main line, but keeping them in a branch that for paid support.
Well, I think
that would they still survive under that model?
I think one of the things that Mongo is doing specifically is like an open core kind of thing, where they have they've got like the open source MongoDB is like basic database capabilities like field level encryption and querying encrypted documents and like those kinds of things. Those are things that are kept proprietary. Exactly.
But that model has always made sense. Like you have the Adobes of the world doing that, where it's like, I will offer you a basic bare bones thing. And if you want to write all the candy code on top of it to make it really enterprise and make it work, knock yourself out. But we're going to give you the base bits for free. That model still works. Like that model, it still keeps the Amazons of the world because you've actually kept the hard problems out of the open source.
Yeah.
Similar to like, again, you've got Spring that's creating security fixes. I'm assuming not all the security fixes are trivial.
You can say that again.
So if you were to publish those for free,
We used to.
non-trivial security fixes, people pick them up for free. If I have to solve that,
They actually sell them. They make money off our stuff.
If I was going to try to re-implement, it's just easier to pay you guys. It's economics. Like, I'd rather see it solved with economics than lawyers. That is the point.
No, that's right. That's right.
And it's interesting because like I can say that even though like AWS has DocumentDB, there is still cases for Mongo outside of AWS. Like even when you can access AWS infrastructure, sometimes you want to use something that is not charged by the operation. That's that. But the other thing I see, and the interesting part that is going to come at the crossroads, is that we are entering a period where we're going to be producing tons of code. Everybody and their mother is creating a new AI project, which means new code is coming out. Like, and things are like I understand like things are moving fast. I just did not realize how fast. Like, I'm reading abstracts that are published like 3 weeks ago. Like this is like, yeah, like it's so new, right? Like and the libraries that come with it, like I wasn't kidding. I do have a PR for you, Michael, because one of the Microsoft Pi models now, it goes from 3,000 to 20,000 vector entries, and Spring AI has like a 3,000 cap on it. Not because anything, because the last month model of Pi used to only have 3,000. Right. So it was, we don't want you to break it. It was a good thing. But now it's like, no, I need to monkey patch this to make use of the latest one. Right. So it's an interesting crossroads where we're putting more constraints. And so there is the legal part of it, right? Where it's like, okay, governments are putting brakes on this, right? There is there's no money for anything except AI. So they're defunding some of these things. And there is the surge of AI things that is pressing the accelerator to the metal. It's going to be tough. Like the problem is, like, it almost feels that if we don't navigate it right, and by we, it's not me or you, or like the industry doesn't navigate it right, we're gonna end up in like completely different futures. Like, I can imagine a dystopian future where there's a walled garden where things are slow but protected, where you pay to get in, and everything in there has been vetted, but it takes years to get something done. Or the other one where we manage to like tie this in, and we can still have this open core thing, and everybody can still like move forward as quickly as we want without having the encumbrance of government, because we somehow have some way for us to like scour or say like, look, we're using, we kind of know it's going to be another pop-up. It's like, are you sure you want to use our software? Right? Like the chain grab things where it's like you're using at your own risk, but if you're okay with that, then go ahead. Right? Like it can, it's going to be a ball ride.
Part of it is like the AI model and the code used to generate it, like, they're two different things, right? It's like a compiled program. Like, so you have the program that creates the AI model, which a lot of companies have open sourced, but the model that gets created off of it, okay, well, a lot of them just license the model and whatever the code was licensed. Well, if it's Apache licensed, anybody could take that model
and do things,
train it, and do things on it, even if and it's totally fine. Like the AI space in licensing is at its infancy right now. I'm actually kind of curious how a lot of this stuff plays out, because you have licenses around data that is used to train the AI models. You have the license on the AI models, and then it's like, okay, we're just using it for inference, and this is the thing that model created. Is that copyrightable? Like, I mean, we have a lot of stuff.
I mean, this is something that I actually have a blog post half written about. Is just, I keep having conversations with people about, all of the AI tools around, the developer tools, right? The code assist and whatnot, the GitHub and whatnot. And I've had conversations with just about every vendor in the space. And my number one question is what is the license of the code that you generate? Nobody will give me an answer. They give me all kinds of like,
They don't know.
like it came from this sort. Like, I don't give a shit where it came from. At the end of the day,
No idea.
I need to know what is the license of the code you like. You are providing me with code at the end of the day. You need to license it to me under some rules. What are those rules? Nobody can give me that. So until they can, my answer to my devs is simple. No.
Yeah, I think it is an open space right now. There's not a lot of legislation around it. But at the end of it, it's going to come down to the data provenance, right? So where did the data come from that you train the models? Where did the data come from that you program to create the models? This is an artifact based on that. So if you source stuff from some other person's copyrightable work and that creates something very similar to that copyrightable work, enough that a judge would say, this is inflicting on copyright, it doesn't matter that it went through a model.
I mean, one of the things that I did, this is why I haven't published the blog post yet, that I've been thinking about is derivative works.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I
so-
mean, they are derivative works. They're separatable, just like a compiled program.
Exactly. So like, if it's a derivative work, in theory, who owned the original copyright isn't,
Yeah.
you can do derivative works on copyrighted works, like that's allowed.
Sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting space that, like I said, the legalities of that are just haven't been laid out
Yeah,
yet.
and the models, it's like the linking exception in Java. Like it is the model itself is separate from the runtime that's used to create. It is separate from the data that's used to create that. However,
That's a
data going into the model may generate similar data to what it was trained on. So is it possible for a model to break copyright because it took something that it learned about and created something a little too simpler to that thing? Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a complicated space, to say the least.
I mean, something like RAG that really opens that up to more different outside sources, right?
Sure. I mean, yeah, you're going to bring in context when you do RAG, right? So you're going to bring in text or images from other sources to try to build. Okay, this is the question I'm asking, and these are the contexts that I'm bringing in.
But one of the ideas there, though,
Being
is
able to
that
know where those things came from. Like, make that decision.
that's one of the key things about that approach is the fact that you control the stuff you bring in. It's not in this nebulous model.
Right.
It's the stuff that you are adding to it.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and that's kind of
Got to come from an understanding of where you sourced it from, the provenance of the data that is going into the model, and what came out of the model is going to be very relevant.
And that's why, a lot of companies are hell-bent on, keeping everything on-prem, keeping the data, not, allowing their data to be contributed.
Don't send it to ChatGPT.
Exactly. I mean, well, even beyond ChatGPT, right? You see all kinds of, articles about licenses of, when I use tool X, is my data allowed to be used to train their AI models? Right. Adobe and Photoshop and Lightroom is blowing up about this every other day.
Oh yeah.
And
you drive your car. Can I use your data to train AI? Like,
I mean, yeah,
you sign the agreement. You used Adobe tools. Yes.
Yes.
Your
So
shit is our stuff. I mean, like, it's insane.
it is. So it really is the Wild West.
Yeah. So it's gonna be exciting and scary, and we're gonna journey to it together. We're gonna be documenting it.
Keep talking about AI. I have a feeling this AI thing is
It's going to be big.
It's gonna stay. No, good that you didn't start on Bitcoin. Like,
forget about Bitcoin.
oh, what was it? No. The Bitcoin was okay. Like the blockchain, but the blockchain that had the contracts in there. So there was blockchains that you essentially put in code to enforce a contract, and the idea was that code, because it was public, then you can know like which contract, like when two people transacted.
Yeah, the whole using blockchain for transaction logs and things like that. Yeah. I still remember talking.
I didn't think of.
I still remember talking to a client that wanted to use it for tracking something, and they're like, "Well, we're doing this one thing this way because once doing this and it becomes fast, then we won't have to worry about this performance problem." But like, if it becomes fast, you've broken blockchain, and that this doesn't work anymore. Like the encryption stuff is supposed to be hard. Like it's
hard.
Words.
if it becomes fast, like this all doesn't work anymore.
There's no value to it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I skipped the whole blockchain thing. I'll
Yeah. AI, LLM is here to stay. All right. And with that note, I think before you're going to be employees of the bar.
we haven't talked in a while, right?
I missed you guys.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to go there in September. So yeah, I'll figure something out. I'll come explicitly to record. So.
This is being recorded, so there's no backing out.
Yeah, no, it's a commitment.
Chicago.
Community.
Everybody in our audience, if Freddie is not on our September episode, get the hell out of them.
He'll buy you a beer.
Every social you can find him on.
Just cancel Freddie.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, I'm already canceled, most likely. In many ways. All right. And with that, we conclude this episode of OffHeap. This is Freddie signing off.
Bob signing off.
Josh signing off.
Michael signing off. If you're listening to this on YouTube, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. If you are on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, be sure to follow us. Thanks, everyone.
We did it!
Yeah.